What
Yeah.
if all these people were looking at the same sky and something united them? And at the time, I was watching way too much Fargo from FX.
Well, I am Zach Owens. I work for Monkeys Fighting Robots, writer and editor there, and I'm going to be talking with the incredible Tom King today about Danger Street Book One and DC's first issue special. How you doing, Tom?
I'm doing great. Let me first off say thank you. You guys have been so kind to me for my entire career. I've met you at a con once and you were so awesome. I have nothing but gratitude towards I already said the word kind. I need another word. Nice. What's a good graciousness, benevolence. My
There
kid's
we go.
taking the SSAT, so benevolent was it's just
Nice.
the
That's a good one.
benevolence of your site. You've just really brought out the best in me as a critic, and
Wow, that's so nice to hear.
I'm greatly appreciative for it.
That's awesome. I'm so glad to hear that. I don't know if this is professional to say, but obsessed with your work. You were one of the people who got me into comics. It was your Batman run that did it. Oh my
Oh wow,
gosh.
that's weird. Yeah, that's the one.
I I love it. I could talk for days
Thanks.
about your Batman run, but oh my gosh, yeah,
Sweet. We'll
so
just
good.
talk Kite Man the whole time.
Yeah, hell
And
yeah.
then, yeah.
One of the things that like I remember just hearing about Danger Street and I was like, oh my gosh, this is going to be perfect. Just a weird cast of characters that no one really knows about, and Tom King and Jorge Fornés, and we have it's Dave Stewart on colors, right? And Clayton
Yeah, that's all
Coles.
just Dave Stewart, who's won 72 Eisners for colors.
Oh
Yeah.
my gosh. Yeah. You have just an incredible team. And you guys worked together. Was it also Dave Stewart? It was Dave Stewart on Rorschach as well.
Yes, this is our long team. We first worked together on Batman Annual 4, maybe my
Oh
favorite
my
Batman
gosh.
issue I wrote. So yeah, this
That's the
is
one that's the journal, right? That goes,
yeah, that's that where we told 7 stories in 7 genres and it just keeps
yeah.
going and going and going.
Oh
Yeah.
my gosh. It's a great one. It's I'd say it's one of my favorites, but they're all one of my favorites if I'm honest. Um so when I heard about this, it's cast of characters no one really knows about. And with your team talking about it, I was like, this is going to be incredible. And I sat down and I was like, you know what, I need to read DC's first issue special, and part of me was expecting it to bomb. Like I was expecting it to be, because what it like no real series came out of it, right? Warlord was,
Warlord did, yeah. One
but
one one real series came out
it
of it.
was already on the books before he debuted in first issue special, wasn't it?
He had been promised. I was just on a panel with him, so I know the backstory of this.
Oh, okay, cool.
He had been promised the series, but then it was like um it had been taken off on and off the schedule. So he wasn't 100% sure whether it was going to go forward when he
Oh,
first
okay,
issued.
okay, okay. That's
It's kind of those
interesting.
things where
Yeah,
where they just told him this would be this. Yeah, because
yeah,
first issue special was kind of, it was a transition period between
yeah,
Carmine and Janet. When they got a new publisher and editor in chief, so it was like it was between that two times. It was kind of two reigns fighting each other.
yeah. And I know that at least what I read about it is that they were wanting to do a new showcase, but then they realized why showcase was 3 issues rather than 1 issue, and it was because it gave them more turnaround time, right, to figure out if they had. So I think that was, at least from my understanding of what I read about it, that's part of the reason nothing came out of it, was just it was a like just that they couldn't figure out how to make it work for getting that.
According to Mike Gold, who was there at the time as an associate editor, he says, and the story's more complicated than this, but it came down to something like, Kirby had just left to go back to Marvel, and there's a few Kirby stories that were kind of left over.
Yeah.
Because he was his own editor, so sometimes he would just turn in stuff that no one asked for, and they'd be like, "All right, make us."
Incredible legend. My
Yes,
gosh.
legend. Yeah. So they had a few of those, and they had a few Simons, and they were trying to figure out a place to put them, and they're like, "Well, first issues always sell good, so we'll just do a series of first issues."
Yeah.
And because Showcase had just died a few years earlier,
Yeah.
so
And then
rather
they
than
brought it
bringing
back the
Showcase
year
back,
after first issue, right?
yeah, and then they did that. Yeah.
Yeah.
So that was it was a dumping ground for things they had in the closet,
Okay.
basically. Yeah.
That makes a lot of sense. And so when I sat down to read it, I was like, one series came out of this.
Oh,
You
and
could also
New Gods
Return
became a
of the New
series, but it was
Gods, right?
already,
Yeah.
that was definitely already supposed to be a series. They were just debuting it there.
Yeah. And it came out quite a bit after, didn't it? Wasn't it further down the line after they'd kind of shut the book on first issue special that it came back up? Sorry, my research on this is a bit
I love
spotty.
it. Yeah. My understanding, and I think this comes from Conway, is that it was greenlit and they just decided to debut it there, and then it would eventually come out there.
Okay, that makes sense. Needless to say, I sat down to read this, and I already had like a title in mind for the article I was going to write, which was I sat down to read DC's first issue special, so you won't have to, right? because I'm thinking, two series came out of this 13 issues of first issues. There's no way this is any good. And then I sit down to read it, and it's comic book magic from page 1 to the end.
No, it's not. The Outsiders is one of the worst issues ever written.
Okay,
There's some bad things.
The Outsiders isn't great. The Outsiders isn't great. But it's also like it's one of those things where there's so much creative freedom. They just like throw everything against the wall, see what sticks. Okay, so can you tell that's how I first discovered it, which I know everyone's getting on this chat to hear. How did Zach discover these things, right? That they want to hear from me.
I'm fascinated you found worth in these things, because I found worth in them too. So it's nice to feel like I'm not alone in the universe.
I loved it.
When I was first reading them, I was like, I'm the only person who's going to appreciate that there's actual, like, that this lady cop story is like shocking. It's like it's sexist but shockingly a little compelling. And like I want to read the next issue, and it doesn't exist.
It was, and it's also like it's about sexism, right? Like it's it's definitely of its time, and you read certain things in it, and you're like, oh gosh. But it is also something that was taking on its time as well, in a way that I wouldn't have expected a comic from 1975 to do.
Yeah, that was their Kanigher's specialty. He was trying to, write what the kids were liking. So he'd always sort of touch on racism and sexism, but he would always did it from sort of an older guy's perspective. So it was always a little not as good as it could have been. Yeah. But there was some effort in it, at least. I have the trade right here, or the hardcover that I get comps from DC. They send me all their hardcovers. So I got the comp of the first. I have no idea why they made this. I think Bendis had some plans to do something with some of these characters, and so they did it for that, and then it didn't go forward. That's a suspicion. I have no idea if it's true. I should ask the trade. So I got that in my comps. And I love old comics, so I'd never heard of first issue specials, and I know so much about comics, so it's very bizarre. And I was flipping, I was like, I'm just going to read this, and I read it, and it was just the most bizarre things ever. From the green team to the Outsiders was terrible, to a codename Assassin, and then some absolute classics. The Warlord, the Dr. Fate issue is sort of almost the birth of the modern Walt Simonson. And the thing to me, I was like, how could all these things exist in the same universe? Like, how could Dingbats of Danger Street exist in the same as New Gods? Like, isn't that the whole conceit of our industry, is that they made this series and all these people are playing on the same earth, and that they're all looking at the same sky? And I was like, that's a series, that's a thing. What if all these people were looking at the same sky and something united them? And at the time I was watching way too much Fargo from FX.
Great show. Oh my gosh.
I love it.
Fantastic
so much.
Show.
So if you watch that show, you'll immediately see the influence. And of course, every season of Fargo is about a bunch of random people who you can't believe exist in the same place, in the same universe. And they're all tied together by usually by a female cop just trying to do her best. And here I have Lady Cop at the center of this thing.
That's incredible.
Based obviously on the Coen Brothers movie, that's the plot of the Coen Brothers movie. And here I had Lady Cop, and I was like, oh, this is just a season of Fargo waiting to be written. And we have to wait too long between each seasons of Fargo, because the writer goes off to do stuff. Now he's doing an alien thing.
Noah Hawley, right?
Noah Hawley, yeah, he's so brilliant.
Incredible.
And I was like, well, rather than waiting for the next season of Fargo, I'll just write it with comic books.
Wow. I had not made that connection whatsoever, but now that you have, I'm nerding out even more over this. This is incredible. Okay, so I was going to ask, what did your preparation and research look like for Danger Street? Did it involve a lot of Coen Brothers movies?
It did. Normally I steal from old movies. I'm always about the 40s noirs and all these things. But yeah, it did. I watched a lot of Coen Brothers movies. I like that sort of tense. I had done at the time I started, because I wrote this over a year ago. I wrote the whole thing. It's been
Yeah.
a while since I actually wrote it. And I was still working on this Tommy Lee Jones project. We were doing a TV show together. So he would sort of share, because he obviously No Country for Old Men, which is my favorite movies of all time. And so
Fantastic movie.
And our series was a kind of, evolution of that, or his character in that. So I was constantly revisiting that movie. So that was sort of part of it, sort of, the sheriff at the center of chaos was definitely in my head at the time.
Yeah. This is a little off topic, but do you have a favorite Coen Brothers movie? Out of curiosity. I know it's hard to rank. They're all so good.
It's funny. I'm like, I was in a Coen Brothers mood, right? Because I did True Grit. Although True Grit's, I read the books. That's more based on the book than the movie, but the movie's so good. A favorite of all time. I don't know. Like my brain's like, say Lebowski, but that's like saying your favorite candy is chocolate.
Yeah, I know what you mean.
No, I don't think I have. When I was a kid, the Hudsucker Proxy was like my favorite movie of all time for like 5 years. So I'll say the Hudsucker Proxy just to be cool and nerdy on the side.
Oh my gosh,
for kids.
Hudsucker, it's great. Oh my gosh. I knew you were a fellow comic book fan. I didn't know you were a fellow Coen Brothers fan. So I'll try and keep myself together as I nerd out more and more. It's just going to keep happening throughout the conversation.
I'm ready.
Okay, so going back to first issue special, when you were reading it, which was the issue that really stuck with you the most?
I mean, the Dr. Fate issue for the art, which is a silly thing to say.
But it's fantastic art. It's beautiful.
I'm not the first person to say this in comics, but Walt Simonson has become kind of all of our grandfathers. He's a friend of mine. We have lunch and dinner, but he's kind of who you want to be as a comic book creator. And I'm not the only. Bendis says this, Mark Miller says this. Every single person who knows Walt is like, there is a way to happiness and artistic, both pushing yourself artistically without losing your moral center, and that's kind of who Walt is. Yeah. And so that one hit me hard because I could see I could see him sort of evolving from his Manhunter days to what his Thor would become. And him sort of taking on Dr. Fate and reimagining what magic would look like. That was super cool. We mentioned it before, but the Lady Cop one hit me pretty hard because that was one part that surprised me the most in terms of its quality. I was also doing, I have this Image series, Love Everlasting, which is all about romance comics. So I was reading.
Great series. Love it.
Yeah. Oh, thanks. I
love it everlastingly.
Thanks. I'm working on it nonstop right now for secret reasons. So I was reading dozens and dozens of romance comics to sort of prep myself for that. And John Rosenberger, who's the artist on that, it was a classic romance artist. That's mostly what he did his whole comics career in the 50s, 60s, up to the 70s. This is one of his last comics he ever died. He died fairly soon after this. So it was interesting to see that sort of romance comics tropes then turned into crime tropes, which was fascinating. I have a page of that on my wall.
Of Lady Cop?
Of Lady Cop, yeah.
Wow.
It was hard to hunt down. The other things, like I said, The Outsiders was so bad. It was like it was like watching Plan 9 from outer space. Where you're like, how did this get made? What was someone edited this? Someone published it? Someone wrote it? Yeah. Someone drew it?
There's also like, how is no one noticing that they're all living in that hospital when they, come out of it every night to fight crime and then go back in? No one's called the cops on them, really.
And then he introduces this whole team and he's like, here's their origin stories. And he tells 2 of their origin stories and just randomly stops. Yeah. You're like, what happens to the other 7 guys in this team? You're like,
they were really counting on that second issue for sure.
They were like, this. We're definitely going to get a whole series out of this. We don't even have to tell why they're together or what their mission is.
You don't even have to sell this. It sells itself, right?
No, it's like, so that I found, every issue had its thrills, I guess. I could keep going. Yeah. Codename Assassin. No one, like the rumor is nobody actually knows who drew that. It was sort of sent to the Philippines at the last second. And, all those brilliant Filipino artists that had come into comics, no one actually took credit for it. So it's kind of a mystery who drew it.
Oh, really?
That's what I've been told. I don't know if that's 100% true, but I've been told that by people.
Wow. That's an incredible
So,
backstory.
but that character design is so cool, and his codename Assassin. I like his name. Codename his codename Assassin. So his code name is his job. That's the worst code name anyone's ever had.
What do you, Assassin? What do you do for a living?
That's a,
Wait till
you'll
I
never
tell
guess based on my code name. Assassin.
I'm a mailman.
Yeah, mailman.
Didn't see that coming. I feel like there's an aspect to first issue special that kind of takes existing characters and warps them a little bit, like in a fun way. So like you get Mikhail Thomas, who like rivals Jean Jeans for having the easiest name to turn into an English version of it, right? Michael Thomas.
Yes.
And he's so much like Martian Manhunter kind of character, but then the opposite, you know, like Martian Manhunter is such a noble character, and then you get him and he's like, I hope you all burn in hell to his alien race. And then Codename Assassin is basically kind of like Batman with telepathic powers and stuff. Yeah, it's just an interesting. What do you think of how that came about and everything?
I mean, with the Blue Starman was nice because I didn't really want to. I mean, you have to have diversity. Your comics have to reflect the world, right?
Yeah.
And so when you say I'm going to redo 13 comics of the past, you can't do that unless those comics have some diversity in them, or else it's stupid. It's dumb. So it was nice that we had Blue Starman, who was canonically LGBTQ. It was nice that Jack Kirby at that time was on a mission to add diversity to comics. So there were Black characters, there were Asian characters.
Yeah.
So that aspect of it made it and there, you know, like I said, there's strong females with Lady Cop.
Yeah.
So that aspect made it doable. Like it made it possible to make these characters who seem so random actually exist in our world, because if you took 13 random stories in our world and they were all white people, it's not 13 random stories. So so that was another thing looking at it. I was like, okay, we could do this.
Yeah. In the same way that those creators kind of took like the archetypes of characters that already existed and mess with them a little bit. Do you have any characters yourself that I know you've already done this with characters, you've changed them quite a bit. I think I saw somewhere where you talked about is it that your Booster Gold you write as, I can't remember what's the guy's name from Futurama?
I forget it. Captain's yes, the captain from Futurama.
The captain from Futurama.
Zap Brannigan.
Zap Brannigan. There we go. That's what it is.
And a spiff is skiff. Sorry.
Yeah.
I do sometimes write people off model. That's very but I mean, but I feel like Booster has it in him. That's how they did it for I got that from Justice League Action, that great animated series. They also wrote him that way. So I felt that gave me permission, at least if someone had set the bar.
And there's a lot of that, I think, as well, even in just the original Justice League International series.
Yes.
Like you really get that feeling of him being Zap Brannigan. I totally see it. Like it was there. But is there any like character that you wish you could take, or even like take the model of and change it a bit and make another character with, or just change a bit as they are now?
I did that some of these characters were such blank slates. I tried not to look at their history. Like when I looked at the Green Team, I didn't look at the new 52 Green Team. For Blue Starman, I tried not to incorporate all the stuff that James Robinson had added, which I didn't sort of want to touch. So some of them were pretty blank slates. Like the Green Team, they're presented as good guys. I made them into more bad guys. They're presented as entirely benevolent. But to me, that was like, if you're a 14-year-old who somehow has billions of dollars and you're trying to be benevolent, you're gonna be a horrible human being somehow. You just don't have the experience to have that much money. Your brain is not ready. I mean, it's hard to imagine a world where we have billionaires with the brains of teenagers, but somehow I've reached out and
it's tough. I don't see that anywhere.
No, it was
in what we're experiencing.
It was a stretch of the imagination to find that, but so it was that kind of thing where I took like characters who thought of themselves as the good guys in their stories, but to me, if you look at them from a different perspective, there's some moral complexity to it. I mean, the Creeper is the prime example of that. Dicko, I think Dicko is one of the modern geniuses of graphic, but we definitely don't see eye to eye on sort of how we see the world. We probably see exactly opposite. The world is black and white. Everything in my writing is the world is gray.
Yeah.
And so Creeper is one of those characters where he's like, this is a good guy who sees the difference between good guys and bad guys and knows what's right and wrong and is going to go and fight right and wrong. But he designs him as like the Joker. So it's like his mind is fighting with itself.
He was supposed to be like the good guy version of the Joker, wasn't he?
Yeah, some good guy version of Joker. And he was supposed to be like, his origin story is he was on a talk show. Well, I mean, it's not superhero, but his regular origin stories. He was on a news show and he told the truth about a crime boss who was actually evil and everybody loved him, and he got fired for that because he said the crime boss is super evil and everyone says he's super good. And so I took that and I don't think twisted it, but I said, okay, this is a guy who's on the news, who thinks there's a strong difference between right and wrong, who hates crime. Like, what would that look like today? And it would, we have a lot of those people in our lives too.
We have a lot of examples of that, and they're not always good.
Yeah, and they're not always good. Yeah, and they're not always. They don't always realize the impact of what they're saying. Yeah, and I think that's true with sort of our Creeper character, where he sees himself as, because when you think of the world as black and white, you don't realize how much of yourself you're using as a judge, and I think that's who Creeper is. Yeah,
and you definitely see that even like right off the bat in the first issue. You see those themes coming in of black and white not being so black and white.
Yes.
But it's an interesting way of like putting those things together, the black, white, and gray of like, okay, this character sees it as black and white, but do you as the reader see what he sees as black and white the same way?
Exactly. Yeah.
One of the things about first issue special is it was written in a time where things have now changed in how we write things and stuff. So it was definitely cheesy and campy, for at least for modern comics. You look at it now and there's a lot of cheese, a lot of camp to it, but I loved it. I think that's what like makes it such an enjoyable read at times. And
I wrote a romance comic as my image book. I obviously love cheesy and campy. I have a soft spot behind it. So.
And I've seen you do that in past projects before, where you kind of dip into the voice of the era that you're talking about, like Strange Adventures. When we're looking at the half of the book where it's him, it's his autobiography. There are so many moments in it where it's like, don't think about it. This is just action. You're fine. Keep watch the explosions. They're pretty. And Love Everlasting is a great example of that as well. You really dip into those romance comics and their style. Is Danger Street going to be a series that you are going to dip into those styles in that era a little bit, or are you going to write it in mostly a modern voice?
No, this is a complete modernization. Yeah, no, it's not. We're not looking back at those styles at all. This is me trying to dig the honesty that was sort of behind the bombast. Mm-hmm. I mean, that, like anything from any era, it's told in the style these guys were told to write comics, because they were writing comics for 9-year-olds and mm-hmm. at the oldest 12-year-olds. But these were these were very deep thinking people. This is Jack Kirby, this was Joe Simon, this was Mike Grell,
Ditko,
Jerry Conway, Marty Pascow, Bob Kanigher. I mean, these were men in their 40s and 50s who had ambitions to be great writers and were writing for children. And because of that, you can't help to see that ambition sort of seep through the format in which they're forced to write. So my job was sort of find those little strings and pull on them and bring that ambition forward. So it's entirely a modernization. I mean, those are my favorite kind of comics, when people take things from the past that seem silly and take them seriously and make them cool. I think of Jeff Loeb's Challengers of the Unknown. And obviously what Alan Moore did with the Charlton's characters.
No kidding. What
Mark Grunwald did with Squadron Supreme. It goes like that list to me goes on and on. Those were always my favorite. What Frank Miller did every time he touched anything.
There's someone who did that with like Kite Man. I can't remember who that was, but
what JMS did with Squadron Supreme again.
Yeah.
So yeah, well, yeah, that's my favorite thing. Yeah, if you reach into the past and make the absurd serious, and it suddenly becomes tragic and cool.
Yeah. We already talked about how nothing, like some things came of Danger Street, but in a lot of ways, not many of them got any series as a result.
No.
Sorry, first issue special. I said Danger Street.
Yes.
First issue special. There weren't really series that came of it. After Danger Street is done, I know that's like way down the line from now, but once it's done, and not spoiling anything, so it doesn't have to be in continuity or anything like that, but are there any characters from your series that you're like, oh, I want to see them in a series from here on out? You know, I would like to see a series picked up about them.
It's funny reading, because again, I wrote it a year ago, so I'm reading it now. Or maybe a year and a half ago, where I'm reading it fresh every time I get an issue, and to be like, oh crap, did I do this? And reading that, it sounds incredibly silly, but it's like, why aren't the Dingbats of Danger Street like a cool WB show? Like things like,
oh yeah,
like these. Yeah, I mean, these four hooligans. I mean, each of them has such life in them. Good Looks, the arrogant one. Bananas, the funny one. Crunch, the stupid big one. And Non-Fat was kind of the leader of them all.
Yeah.
I immensely enjoy. I'd like to see their adventures sort of expand, because I mean they're the stupidest concept, the Dingbats of Danger Street. They just sound dumb. No one's used the word Dingbats in 50 years, non-ironically.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think they would have.
You'd like to see them pop back up again.
Yeah, I'll put them out as the random kind of thing.
Nice. Yeah, Kirby was so good at just creating archetypes and like seeing how they would work together. I mean, Fantastic Four, great example. Am I allowed to say that on a
How
DC chat?
dare you?
Let's I mean something DC related.
The New Gods.
The New Gods. Yeah, he was good. Exactly.
The Forever People.
Also great comics. When I know for some writers, and tell me if this isn't sometimes a writer will sit down and they'll start writing a character, and then the character will kind of take on a life of its own. And it's like you're wanting them to do one thing, but you find you're just writing them doing another thing. Do you ever find that's the case with you?
Yeah, constantly. When I'm writing, I'm just watching a movie of what I want to write, and I just watch them do it. And then sometimes I'll be like, oh man, that scene sucked. I wish they do that again. And I say, oh, that's a better scene. But basically, I always feel like I'm just being dictated to by the forces of whatever.
Yeah.
I'm just
by the characters themselves, almost, or
by the characters and the story and what needs to happen. Yeah, that's when I write, I disappear into another world. So it takes a few seconds to get there. But it's you're on your keyboard, you're typing. So you're looking at a script, but you're seeing the final comic that's getting made, and you're also seeing the movie that's made from the final comic. And you're seeing all three of those things at once, somehow at the same time, like you're looking into those old Disney animation cells where they had them stacked on top of each other.
So do you feel like there was
a
character in particular that like surprised you while you were writing them, or was it just kind of like equal across the board? Was there anyone in particular that you felt like really took on a life of their own? You're like, I wasn't expecting this character to evolve the way it ended up evolving in my story.
Yeah, I have a few. I mean, there's 24 characters, so I could take a bunch of them.
No
but it sounds silly, but Crunch of the Dingbats takes on a very important role. I didn't think sort of he would play. I didn't think I'd be sort of how Creeper plays out, sort of his arc. By the time I was sort of done at the end, I was like, oh, this is not where I expected him to be at the end of this series. And even like Commodore of the Green Team, he became sort of a bunch of them. It didn't turn out. It did not turn out as I thought it would be. The end was not what I thought. When I turned in the end, I was like, this is not what you. I bet this is not how you would think I would end it. To my editor, she's like, oh, my editor, Brittany Holzer, and she's like, well, Tom, this is definitely not how, it was different than I normally end a series. So I was shocked myself.
I'm excited to see it. I think that those kinds of like organic stories, like almost tell themselves end up being the most exciting.
I mean, this happened to me in the very beginning of my career, where I was working on this sheriff book, Sheriff of Babylon,
Great
and
book.
I took two of the random characters, the sort of star and the wife of another character, and put them in a pool house for an issue,
Mhm.
and had them talk to each other. And I was like, and suddenly it was so thrilling. It was like these two characters bouncing off each other suddenly revealed themselves in different ways, and what they were hiding from each other and what they revealed to each other. And that's what I like about this book, is like, Lady Cop, by herself is fairly boring. Put Lady Cop, having a conversation with Warlord, that's like a whole different thing. And her having conversation and how she acts in a conversation with the Dingbats of Danger Street, with how she has in a conversation, Lady Cop, who's probably the lowest, most street level character possible, talking to High Father of the New Gods, who's like the most powerful cosmic person ever. And these sort of dichotomies of character arise that you don't expect, which is always fun.
Okay,
you don't know
quick.
it until they're in the room together.
One of the other things that's really interesting about like just the nature of it being an issue about a different set of characters or character in first issue special means that you're working with a lot of different genres here. Like you get gritty crime, you get like space odyssey kind of genre, you have almost that like romance genre that you were talking about, all kinds of different things. How did you feel working in all of those genres? I know you said like bringing all of those characters together was part of the process of like, oh, what would that look like? But was it freeing? Was it exciting to work in all those genres? Was it daunting, challenging?
I mean, comics are constantly shifting genres. As a comic writer, you're constantly some people in Hollywood, like I do westerns, or I do space stuff, or you're a comic writer, you can't be free to do that. I did Omega Men, Vision, and Sheriff all at the same time, and to me, those three felt like the same story, but just in three different genres. Like it wasn't the genre that matters; it was the characters that mattered, and that's still the case to this day. It's all about the character. But what, of course, when you're doing fiction, what matters is stakes. So you always think to yourself, like, whenever DC does an event, they're like, oh, the universe is going to end. That has to be the stakes.
Yeah.
And so it has to be huge and cosmic, and the hand reaching out of the thing. And so I think, okay, that's part of DC Comics. But like also, like, you watch like a movie like The Bicycle Thief, and like the stakes in that are my bicycle got stolen, and the stakes are so high you can't believe how much you're scratching at your chair. Because so like, to me, the stakes of a thing don't matter. It can be a universe, or it can be a bicycle being stolen, and that's what this show is about. Like, for the Dingbats, the stakes here is one of their friends died. That's huge. For the New Gods, the stake are that the universe is ending, and they have the same sort of emotional connection to this, because for both of them, it's what they most love in the world is ending, and so that's the whole point of the thing. Is it's sort of these emotions crisscross, even though the actual state of the world is much different.
So it's like across those different genres, the motivations are different, but the stakes are the same because of the scope of each of their worlds. Yeah,
or the motivations of this. Everything is the same. All it changes is what the artist draws.
Nice.
If I write a scene, between High Father and Darkseid, where they're talking over the fact that Atlas is dead, and therefore the sky is falling, and the world and the universe is going to explode.
Yeah.
And then I write that, and I mean, that has to be huge and cosmic, and stars are exploding, and every time they move, one of them flowers pops out, and the other one dead people fall to the floor. Like, it's this whole thing. But I could write that exact same scene, and it's about Warlord and Starman sitting in a hotel room, talking about their colleague that just died and what they're going to do next. And it's the same scene. It's just the artist has drawn different things.
Yeah.
It's what matters in each is the emotional connection. What matters in each is what these characters want and who they are, and how those two things conflict.
You're dealing with people like Dr. Fate, Metamorpho, Dingbats of Danger Street, the New Gods. So you're dealing with a whole like range of characters, from kind of big ticket to small potatoes. Do you have a preference writing either big ticket characters or smaller, more obscure characters?
No, I've never had a preference for. I mean, I have a preference for things like an artist I want to work with, or an inker or an editor. or a situation like how many issues we get, how much interference, uh, when the guest artist will come on. Those things I have strong preferences about.
Yeah.
But who the characters are and what the genre is, no, I don't. I never have a preference for any of that, because it's all, in the end, it's all just human stories,
Yeah.
What do I have now? Human Target. I mean, Human Target is like a huge superhero. I mean, the next issue of Human Target, Human Target goes to Oa and walks around, but that's still like a little character noir. Like, even though they're on Oa, it's a character noir. Any that's the magic of comics, is that they can sort of absorb genre and twist genre and turn on its side, but really it's sort of about these people, and it's about connecting it to the humanity of these people.
Human Target does that so well, just like what you were talking about, the stakes and everything being the same for everyone, even though they're from such different places. When you get characters like Green Lantern and Christopher Chance in the same room, you don't expect it to be weird, but it just works.
Kelly Sue DeConnick has a fantastic line, which I know it keeps sticking in my head over and over again, where when people ask her, how do you write good female characters, she writes, my first step is to pretend they're human beings.
That's a good one.
Right. Yeah. So I always think of that, like, how do you write cosmic people? For my first step is I pretend they're human beings. I pretend they're people I know, and people I went to high school with, and people I went to college with, and people I just met on the street, and people who are struggling with all the things all of us are struggling with, just because they have superpowers. Or and I mean, if there's been any lesson in the last 20 years, it's that the people who have more money and more power are just as vulnerable as and as silly and as graceful as the rest of us. There's no line drawn in no line drawn in the sand between one human and another that says you're somehow more closer to God than I am. We're all just struggling with the same existential malaise. And love, and graceful love, I should say, not just malaise.
I was going to say that is a great note to end us on right there.
There you go.
The existential malaise.